So good morning, everybody. And on behalf of everybody at Forum Europe and of all of our partners for this event, a very warm welcome to this morning's webinar that is going to be focusing on releasing the potential of fixed wireless access in Europe. We have a good couple of hours of discussions ahead of us, and we have a great lineup of speakers with us. So we're really looking forward to what I'm sure is going to be some really, really interesting discussion. Before we start, though, just a couple of things I wanted to mention on the logistical side. First of all, for the platform itself, hopefully, well, if you're watching me now, then you will have found the stage area of the platform where all of the sessions today are going to be taking place. So all of the discussions will be taking place in this same area on the platform. If you go into the reception area, you can view the schedule for today and details of all the different sessions and the speakers and things like that. On the right-hand side of your screen, you can see a chat bar. And we do please encourage you to post as many messages as possible, questions for the speakers, and any comments that you have in that chat bar. And we will be bringing those across to speakers and putting those to our speakers and panelists during the discussion part of the session. So please do be as active as possible on there. We really do want to hear from you. We want to make sure that the discussions at this event are interactive, and you guys out there are a big part of that. I also wanted to say a very big thank you to our supporting partners for the event. So that's to Arthur D. Little, to Etno, to EDAT, and to GSA. Really do appreciate all of their support. And yeah, without them, the event wouldn't be possible. So thank you very much to all of them. Also, just going back to some of the ways that you can interact and things with the platform, and also more broadly during the event today, we do have a hashtag what we're using for the conference. The hashtag you can see at the top of the screen, just above my head here, is hashtag FWA in Europe. If you're going to be tweeting about the event, if you're going to be wanting to look at what other people are putting about the event on social media, please use that hashtag, and you'll be able to join the discussion on social media as well. Finally, just wanted to mention that the event that is taking place today, all of the sessions are being recorded. A recording of these sessions will be sent out to you post-event. In addition, the slides that are being used by our speakers today, again, those will be made available to you. You can find a link to those in the reception area again on the platform. So without further ado, I'd like to maybe start with some of the topics and start looking at kind of some of the key themes that we're going to be focusing on today. So fixed wireless access, of course, is something that has been around for quite some time. And it's maybe not in the past had the take up that possibly it was initially expected to do so. But now, as we enter the 5G era, maybe some of the obstacles and some of the kind of the possible weaknesses in the past related to speed or latency that can be offered by fixed wireless access and by fixed line broadband connections. With that, possibly it's time for fixed wireless access to really maybe finally release and to match or to meet some of its potential. So in the event today, we're going to be looking at that in a bit more detail. We're going to be focusing on the potential that fixed wireless access can play as part of national broadband plans that are being developed across member states in Europe, and the way in which it can help to contribute to EU connectivity targets, both in the short term and maybe looking forward to the longer term as well. And then finally, with a high number of a high level of public funding currently available to boost connectivity through a number of funding programs, of course, the Recovery and Resilience Facility and also other instruments, we're going to be looking at how fixed wireless access fits within the context of this. So as I said, we've got a great lineup of the speakers to look at these issues. We're going to be starting off very shortly with a keynote presentation, and then we're going to be moving on to our first panel, which is going to be looking at the role of fixed wireless access in delivering the gigabit society in Europe. And then following a break, we're going to be coming back with our second panel, which is going to be looking more at the funding side of things and looking at public funding initiatives to support fixed wireless access and wireless infrastructure investments. So without further ado, I would like to now welcome to the stage our moderator, both for the keynote presentation and also for the first session, and that's Stephanie Cha from EDAT. So Stephanie, welcome. It's great to have you with us. As I said, really looking forward to what I'm sure is going to be some excellent discussion. So without further ado, I will pass the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much. And welcome everyone for this first session and for a very interesting topic today. Before stepping into the panel and discussing more the infrastructure side and obviously the supply and demand for fixed wireless access, I would really like to for you to welcome Franco Accordino, who is head of unit of the investment in high capacity network at the European Commission, for a keynote presentation. And then we will dive into why fixed wireless access now, what's new, and how can it contribute to connecting Europe. Franco?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, really, Stephanie, and thanks also to Dan for inviting me to such an interesting event. I'm very glad to be here together with participants from industry, consultancy firms, and public authorities at the same time. There would be another colleague from myself, Philippe, later on, be involved in the same event, and to discuss the opportunities provided by FWA technology and its market prospects, and how it can help achieving the policy goals that we have set. So in the next 10-15 minutes, I would like really to recap what those policy goals are, because I think these would be the main targets we are working on all together for 2030. But also I'll also try to introduce a little bit the funding opportunities. Philippe then later on will elaborate a little bit more, and also the latest developments in terms of regulatory measures to simplify, to facilitate access to investment, simplify deployment, and rollout of a gigabit capable infrastructures in Europe. So as an EU institution, our job is really to create a fertile ground for the digital transition. We want this digital transition. We are already in the middle of the transition, but we want it to accelerate and deliver concrete advantages to the citizen, to the enterprises, to public administration, and the economy and society at large. And this requires, it's an imperative, high quality connectivity. And allow me to say from the very outset that the combination of 5G with FWA technology has the potential to contribute to the achievement of the European connectivity targets set for the end of the decade. There are, of course, some important boundary conditions to be achieved. We need gigabit capable backhauling, and appropriate densification of 5G antennas in order for 5G FWA to deliver the appropriate quality of service over the covered areas. But I will expand a little bit more on that because it could be interesting for me to just make a few statements on question and then hear what would be also the output of the panel on that, how we can get there via including FWA technology. So, but before doing that, allow me really to recap what are the policy targets, as I said. So, 1 year ago, I think it was really in June, May or June last year, we made a proposal for the digital compass for concrete targets by the end of the decade along 4 dimensions. So here I'm speaking about the 4 dimensions. I could only focus on connectivity. I think it's very important to consider the targets all together in a holistic manner, because connectivity is related, is connected to every other aspect of the digitalization. So the 4 dimensions are, where and are again, still are, businesses, public services, skills, and infrastructures. And when we speak about infrastructure, we speak about also different aspects of the infrastructure. Connectivity being one of them. So concerning connectivity specifically, the Compass sets out 2 targets for 2030. First, gigabit connectivity for all households, and secondly, 5G coverage in all populated areas in Europe. So those 2 are intimately related, because you know that there is no much sense to have 5G without a gigabit capable backhauling. This is fundamental, of course. And the other way around, because you need to bring 5G, you need to bring also appropriate fixed connectivity to the base stations. So the 2 are intimately related. We see the 2 all together, though of course we measure the 2 separately. So the Compass, as I said, sets also other type of targets, which just by setting them will trigger massive deployment and take up of connectivity. So for instance, we set a target for businesses saying we want 75% of the European companies to use a cloud, AI, big data solutions. And of course, these will require proper connectivity. Then we want also public service to be 100% online. These will also spur policies and investments and reform to achieve and including on connectivity side to get to this target. And the same, we want at least 10,000 energy efficiency secure edge nodes in the EU. Also, these nodes will require connectivity at the appropriate level. So just to again insist on the fact that when we set the policy target, we do it in a way that is by definition interrelated and will definitely rely on the greatest possible quality of connectivity. So at the same time, I think it's important not to see connectivity only to support directly the other targets in the other 3 fields, because obviously you know that between the connectivity and the use cases of the verticals, there is a lot in between. In particular, we know that there is the cloud to edge solutions and solutions for AI, data harnessing the data, etc. And of course, in order to reach out the areas that are not necessarily easy for the market to reach, we need to consider all the possible solutions, and FWA is one of them, certainly a very promising one. Of course, I mean, when, as I said, when we look at the connectivity, we need to look also at the in a very holistic manner, looking at the whole digital ecosystem, including the supply. You know that connectivity, the telecom sector is an important, let's say, consumer of equipment and chips. So we have equipment manufacturers all around the world. We have them brilliant manufacturers in Europe as well, and they are made up of chips. So when we set a policy target for connectivity, we trigger is a spillover effect, of course, along the whole value chain, in particular on chips. So all of this is totally related, and you might say, Franco, you are speaking in a very, say, complex manner. How are you going to ensure that we will achieve all these targets? Well, that makes the difference, because in September we made a follow-up communication with the proposal for the Digital Decade Policy Program, where we reinforced again the targets. We reaffirmed the target that we have set in the Digital Compass, but also we propose a way of working together between the Commission and the Parliament, the Member States, and also all the stakeholders, to make sure that we can monitor, first of all, the targets every year. Then that would be via what you already know, the DESI index, Digital Economy and Society Index. Then we report regularly to the Parliament and the Council about the targets. And then we have a coordination mechanism put in place with the Member States at every national policy legislation, in a way that every legislation, any investment that is made at the national or regional level, we can assess whether or not this is in line with the contribution that these step, this action, is making to the target that we have set. So, of course, we need to take into account the specificities of the individual member states, because especially when it comes to connectivity, you know that the member states are characterized by different needs, by different geotypes, and therefore we need to consider the different approaches that the member states legitimately take together with their constituencies and their community of stakeholders. So this is basically, in a nutshell, the policy context. Of course, Philippe later on might elaborate on that, but allow me now to speak about the investment. So how concretely we support investment in gigabit connectivity. So, we have measured the so-called investment gap to achieve the Gigabit Society 2025 targets some years ago with the help of the EIB. And we estimated it to be in the order of 42 billion euro a year in order to fill in these connectivity gaps. So what are the main funding opportunities to inject public investment into the market in order to achieve these targets? So first of all, you have seen the RRF, Recovery and Resilience Facility, where we have set 20% minimum investments of the overall envelope given to the member states to be devoted to digital. Well, the good surprise was that we have a 26% average of the member states investing in digital, and when it comes to connectivity, we can count around 13 billions that member states have invested overall, because there are member states that decided to use the RRF more to use for connectivity, for instance, Italy and Spain, for instance, others that legitimately decided to support the connectivity needs with the other programs or their national funds. All of these is perfectly legitimate, but the main message here is that indeed this gives a lot of spin in certain member states, and FWA was one of the technologies that was chosen to support their RRF recovery resilience goals. So that, for instance, Italy. So this is absolutely an important signal for us, because it resonates. I mean, it goes hand in hand with what we think about. Indeed, FWA, if properly, designed and deployed, can definitely support the gigabit objectives that we have set for the end of the decade. Then we have, in addition to the RRF, we have the RDF, the regional funds, and the agricultural fund that are currently being, the operational programs and the partnership agreements are currently being designed by the member states and in cooperation with the Commission. Of course, the good news is that digital is a priority in those programs and connectivity can be supported. So precisely, if you look at the agricultural fund, you can imagine that they target also the rural areas where bringing fiber, bringing other type of fixed technology might not necessarily be straightforward. Therefore, the FWA solution could be a way forward. Then we have also InvestEU, which is our guarantee fund, with the 26.2 billions, which aims at mobilizing more than 370 billions in public and private investments. The good news is that at least 10% of this program we estimate will feed into digital goals. And of course, connectivity will be one of them. And then last but not least, we have the Connecting Europe Facility program, which we are more managing directly. Actually, my unit is responsible for it, where we have important investments related to 5G, including at the macro scale, the 5G corridors. Then we have what is called the 5G smart communities. We have also strategic deployment of strategic backbones across member states. So we have issued the call early in January this year, and which closed is the first call on the 22nd of April. We are currently already analyzing the eligibility of proposals, and we expect to have a second call launched later this year in the autumn. Sorry, later on this year, and then another one in 2023, and there will be other calls until 2027. The total envelope, you might already know, that is 2 billion, more than 2 billion euro, devoted, as I said, half of it to 5G, and let's say the important message I wanted to pass here is that we really want to use the CEF, because 2 billion, you might look, it's quite a lot of money, yes, but if we compare it to the annual gap that I just mentioned, it's just too small. But the type of contribution that can give is goes beyond the arithmetic or numerical aspects of the investment, because we really want to use the CEF along two axes. First, to complement what the member states typically do with their national programs or with the shared management European programs, like the regional funds or agriculture funds. So we want to complement, because those funds will typically focus on the national needs, while the CEF, precisely with the 5G corridors along the major transport paths cross-border, those are areas that typically are close to, market failure or close to market failure, and therefore where CEF can intervene, CEF intervention makes sense, So this is one element. So European level, we try to use the CEF budget, and then also we use the CEF to as a best practice mechanism. For instance, when deploying 5G in local communities, for instance, to support use cases in the field of smart agriculture, smart cities in general, villages, or transport, or health, or education. Of course, the knowledge needed, the know-how for the local authorities to do this might not necessarily be there present at the fingertips. So if you have templates or blueprints that we can develop at the European level and make them available to everyone, that can facilitate the life of these small communities a lot. And so that is exactly what we do with our action under CEF. So in a nutshell, the CEF is a great opportunity because participating and succeeding to the CEF goals means also getting a flag of being an excellent project, and can become a kind of a template at the European level with, of course, a possible spillover effect in terms of generating more opportunities and accelerating the transition to 5G. And when we speak about 5G, we speak about, of course, both the mobile and the fixed side of it, because there are certain areas objectively that it's not cost effective, at least for the time being, to bring fiber from the very day one. Therefore, the FWA again represent a good alternative for certain cases, let's say. Of course, another point I wanted to say is that within the context of CEF, we promote a lot the use of financial instruments and blending operations and blending facilities. So building on the success of the Connecting Europe Broadband Fund in terms of attracting private investors into an equity fund. This is a fund that we have launched 4 or 5 years ago, and little by little, year by year, has gathered, attracted equity investments from the private sector. Now there is a lively pipeline of projects that is curated and is developing further. But of course, on building on this experience to attract. I will conclude I'll need another 2 or 3 minutes and then I'll conclude. Thank you. So we really need these instruments because they facilitate a lot the investments. For instance, by looking at the implication from the point of view of the state aid market conformity, which is also quite important. So what do we do also at the European level? We are working on important regulatory measures. I mentioned only 2. I will not elaborate on that. One is on the simplification and cost saving. We are working on the the revision of the broadband cost reduction directive based on the first version of this directive, which is dated now 2014. And secondly, we are working together with our colleagues in DG Competition on the new state aid broadband guidelines, which in both cases we plan to release around summertime. Allow me to say a few more final words on FWA. So, of course, as I already said, this is a quite important technology for those areas that are difficult to reach, but also in certain suburban areas which fail to attract large investments due to certain socioeconomic conditions or because of the topographic, orographic, let's say, situation of that areas. So sparsely populated areas, remote areas, that is absolutely a good solution, of course. It is important that FWA comes with the appropriate approach to fiberization of the base stations. This is and also with the proper densification approach, because from that point of view, we see FWA as a quite scalable technology. If you deploy the first version, you can later on intervene and scale it up and improve, let's say, the performance. We know that about the performance, we should not limit ourselves by no means only to the uplink or downlink characteristics. There is the latency, low latency, and error rate. They have also to fulfill certain quality standards for certain applications that we can envisage in the coming 5 to 10 years. In particular, we see in the coming 5 to 10 years an increasing convergence for certain type of categories between uplink and downlink. Take it, for instance, cloud, the VPN. They increasingly demand symmetric, let's say, characteristics, even if not maybe 100% symmetric, but certainly narrowing the ratio between uplink and downlink. But especially there are applications at the horizon, the metaverse or augmented reality that needs, of course, low latency. Other applications like e-health, telemedicine that require zero error rate or close to zero error rate. Those things have to be considered, and I think as long as FWA can support this, that is welcome. We need to be technology neutral, and in this respect, if FWA is capable of supporting our gigabit target, this is very welcome technology. So I want really to conclude here. I could speak a bit more about more technical aspects about FWA, but of course I prefer to give the space to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Franco. Thank you very much for your keynote. It was very interesting and exhaustive of all the measures the Commission has put in place to tackle part of the digital divide, and obviously your 4 digital targets. And it's really good to remind us that it's not only about connectivity and infrastructure, it's also what you do about it. And for the little story, for those who join us, we work with Franco at IDAT, with CBO Consulting and Visionary Analytics, on the private investment side of how to deploy the network. And obviously, fixed wireless access was one of the technology, satellite also, in this group of technology neutral elements to provide gigabit speeds to all, according to the targets. We might have time for one question before moving to the panel. So there was one question from a journalist about the funding. I'm not sure if it's going to be answered in the next session, but one of the questions was like, how can money be directed to location that would not otherwise be served? You were talking about market failures in some instances in terms of connectivity. How do you target those in particular?
Well, I just mentioned basically we act at 2 levels. First, investments. There are investments particularly dedicated to the rural areas. there is a rural action plan that we develop also together with the colleagues in the DG Agriculture. So of course, the investment is only one side. Secondly, so in most of the cases, these investments are made by the member states, and therefore they can be qualified as state aid because the decision is for the member states. So to facilitate, let's say, the investments, we are working also on the new broadband guidelines for state aid, which where we try to broaden as much as possible the scope of market failure by raising the thresholds and allowing for the intervention to take place in the market failure areas more easily than it would be with the current guidelines, which date 2013. So this update you will see, hopefully soon, will provide will unleash plenty of more possibilities for the rural areas and for the market failure areas in general. And in defining these market failure thresholds, we try to be as much as possible tech neutral, as you already know, by using definitions like VHCN. In VHCN, you know that we have to have either fiber to the households or the base station, or we have to have the equivalent of 1 gigabit download and 200 megabit uplink performance. So with this neutral definition, we ensure that, for instance, fiber infrastructures are not overbuilt, because this is part of the definition of VHCN, and that other technologies that can provide equivalent performance are also not are protected. So this guarantees technology, being it FWA or maybe the future of DOCSIS, that EDAT has also studied quite a lot, can continue if they are capable of updating and delivering increasing performances along the lines that we have indicated in our policy targets. I hope I reply to Dave.
Yes. Maybe a very short, if you can keep it short, overview of fixed wireless access in the new broadband cost reduction directive. What's the place of it, and is it targeted?
Of course, I have to say that I'm not in the position to share at this stage the insights of what will come in the CRD, but certainly you can imagine. I mean, it's not science fiction. There is a benefit. So FWA will benefit from the new BCRD, because for what I said, with the 5G FWA, you need to have fiber to the base stations. And fiber base station means that you face the same problems that you have when you have to lay down buried infrastructures. So permits, access to information, access to civil engineering works, sharing this information. So we aim to really dramatically simplify these things. So if you want to build an FWA solution and you need to backhaul your base stations with fiber, of course, you can be assured that you will be facilitated by the new BCRD in lay down the proper backhauling. Then, of course, from the point of view of the more wireless side of it, of course, on that, of course, the impact will be slightly less. But that is, the fact that FWA is dramatically simpler than fixed solutions, that is not a mystery, of course, because you don't have to do major works for that. That's the reason why you use it. So, but the fixed components, or the fixed component of it, of course, these will benefit like any other infrastructure, I would expect.
Thank you very much, Franco. Thank you very much for being with us and for this keynote. We're ready to move on to the panel right now. So let me introduce everybody before introducing a little bit the topic. So with us today, we will have Konstantinos Masseros, who's president of the Greek regulator EETT and incoming chair for 2023 of BEREC. Then we'll have Bent Andres Truva, head of section for spectrum planning at the Norwegian regulator NCOM. Katri Perala, who's a director of home broadband business at DNA Finland. Julien Grivola, chair of GSA 4G and 5G fixed wireless access forum. And Patrick Robinson, who's vice president Europe of ATEL. So a quick few notes before I open the panel and let everybody present what they're doing in the fixed wireless access scene. As we saw with Franco, and I want to take you back to a very traumatic event we all lived back in March 2020, where every country closed one after the other because of the COVID pandemic. That's a time where more than before, we say that COVID accelerated things, and yes, the transition to higher capacity networks was taking place before. But truly what we understood is if we want to continue living, this life will have to be partially online, if not all online, for those working, for example, in the metaverse, in AI. So you need to be connected and you need to have access to a good connection. So be it for work, teleworking, like we're all online today, for learning, schools, universities, executive education, and all those elements, entertainment, obviously, have taken a very important place online. So more than just infrastructure, it's also the demand side and what people need to do with them from a business or personal perspective that's important. And my first encounter with fixed wireless access, for a little background story, the first lockdown, I needed to go to an Airbnb because of a sick person in my household, and the fiber there didn't work. So they had a backup fixed wireless access router that enabled me to continue working and continue being in touch with others. And I think it was LTE based. So we talked a lot of 5G. Fixed wireless already exists as an LTE technology. Obviously 5G, and we will see, will bring more features into that. So that's a backup plan that is becoming a central solution for some household, also depending on cost of deployment versus other technology, and going into the gigabit speeds thanks to 5G, 6G, and all the other Gs that will follow up. We saw with Franco that the Commission has done a lot of work to fund, to help, to support the deployment of neutral gigabit infrastructure. So again, in different technologies. So far, we know that broadband coverage and ultra-fast broadband has reached a significant portion of the population, mostly in rural, urban area versus rural that are still gray to white zones. And we have to acknowledge that with all the different targets in the Commission's agenda, the Digital 2020 targets have not been fully met. And now we're faced with even more speeds and infrastructure targets in the 2025 gigabit communication agenda and the digital decade goals. So we have a real momentum to deploy a faster network for all. We know now that ultra-fast broadband is essential. Some say it's becoming a commodity like electricity and gas. And fixed wireless access is a big part of it right now. As I said, either as a backup solution or a full solution, sometimes in the white areas where the cost of deploying the last mile is very high. So there are questions about financing and regulating the fixed wireless access, and we'll touch a bit about that in the panel. And a strong link today with the green agenda, because as you all know, connectivity and green are the two Powerball of the Commission and focus of the Commission. So without further ado, let me start this panel. So this panel will draw an outlook of where we stand in terms of fixed wireless access deployments, the different strategies in different member states to deploy, and we have Katri from DNA. How do you sell it as well to the customers, and obviously the ecosystem, who is involved in the fixed wireless access ecosystem right now, which devices are needed to make it happen. So a very broad, large, and interesting discussion ahead. So please let me welcome Konstantinos for his opening remarks, and then we'll take all the questions at the end of the panel, and you can put them in the chat. Thank you. Kostas?
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you for having me here today in this very interesting panel discussion. Well, global demand for broadband connectivity from both households and enterprises has been strong for several years now. Globally, the fixed broadband market is growing, and according to the ITU, fixed broadband subscriptions have increased by 5% annually over the past 5 years. The European strategy for the digital decade, outlined in the 2030 Digital Compass, sets very ambitious objective with regards to fixed connectivity. All European households should be offered 1 gigabit per second access by 2030 in a technology-neutral way. That's a clear call for fiber FTTX deployment acceleration, but also a call for extending and widening fixed wireless access reach to subscribers across Europe if we want this gigabit for all vision to have its fair share of chances for success. Over the last couple of years, I think the public speaking sphere overwhelmingly discussed the pros and cons of wired versus wireless deployments for next generation networks. The fact that there is a certain threshold that allows or prohibits FTTX deployment is well communicated and understood. That is a subscriber density related threshold, and it does change from country to country, but not in a way that would drastically change the norm. Densely populated areas go to fiber. Fixed wireless access can pick up where FTTX is prohibitively expensive, either via 4G or 5G modems going stationary or via millimeter wave radio, unlicensed band using hardware. These two sentences, I'm afraid, distill all that's been discussed up until today, and that's not good enough for servicing our gigabit society's vision. So what's next? I believe what's next is the complex discussion of, first, hybrid fixed wireless access networks, and second, smart cities fixed wireless access integration. From the technical perspective, most, if not all, fixed wireless access challenges narrow down to one problem: line of sight versus non-line of sight, a problem also known as spectrum cost. Radio links having visual line of sight between the transmitter and the receiver typically provide high speeds and low costs. Low costs come with an asterisk and practically means capability to operate in unlicensed wavebands like the 60 gigahertz typically. Second, capability to shift costs, because costs never magically disappear, from the core radio network deployment phase towards the subscriber activation phase. This latter characteristic replaces the impossible FTTX in sparse populated areas business plan with a very convenient and realistic pay-as-you-grow business plan, since adding cost at customer activation phase means that the investor secures a revenue stream first, the customer to be activated before investing further. Investing further in this case relates to subsidizing the new subscriber CPE cost, which is typically expensive, as well as dealing with installation and installation adaptation complexities, like trees growing, buildings rising, heavy wind, weather overall, and similar challenges. On the other hand, non-line of sight bands, typically licensed 4G and 5G bands, offer low overall cost on hardware through benefiting from mobile world economies of scale, which allows silicon and other critical component costs to be in the few dollars range while integrated incredible technologies. The non-line of sight world is dominated by mobile operators for profound reasons. They already have licensed spectrum, while the line of sight world is dominated by challengers. Unless we start evaluating hybrid networks, our quest to the fixed wireless access world would already have ended by what we have already mentioned. By hybrid fixed wireless access networks, I mean deployment scenarios using line of sight technologies to interconnect base stations while relying on 4G and 5G for connecting subscribers to the network, the mobile operator's case, or Wi-Fi, the challenger's case, to do so. Such scenarios will help operators to cut costs in the backhaul and challengers in the access. Both are wins for speeding up deployment and lowering costs for end users, so a primary concern for me and every NRA. What's more to do in this area is to check spectrum auction opportunities in frequency bands sitting in the line of sight, non-line of sight limit, where minor obstacles sitting between the receiver and the transmitter can be forgiven and not causing a link to fail even temporarily. That's on top of my study to-do list for fixed wireless access. Also, as mentioned earlier, smart cities fixed wireless access integration is also a personal interest and concern. Through a very simple, low-tech, but very practical example, smart cities fixed wireless access integration is about addressing problems as the following one. Fixed wireless access can do most of the things a fixed wireless access network needs wirelessly, but not all. Powering fixed wireless access base stations and in general radio network side equipment cannot be done wirelessly. Simplifying the regulatory access framework around street lighting poles and allowing access to this humble but critical infrastructure can deliver a decisive win in promoting fixed wireless access deployments, both for mobile operators and millimeter wave challengers in equal parts. To conclude, getting 1 gigabit per second to everyone across Europe within the next 7 years is a hard goal to go after, but a very inspiring one, definitely a goal worth fighting for. And if we want to give this goal a fair chance of success, fixed wireless access absolutely has to be part of the solution. The event today is a great opportunity to share views and communicate the importance of adding fixed wireless access to the Digital Compass 2030 mix of tools. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share my views on the matter, and I'm really looking forward for the discussion later.
Thank you very much, Kostas. I know as a head of BEREC, in a bit you'll have a lot of work to do on this topic. And as the Greek regulator, with all the geographical specificities of the country, islands are really looking into that technology to get connected. I would like now to invite Bent to discuss his also on the regulatory side with more advanced work on fixed wireless access, and share your views and what you've been implementing on your side.
Yes, thank you, Stephanie, and good morning, everyone. I'll just give you a short introduction to the regulatory situation in Norway and how we see fixed wireless access as a tool to reach out to the whole population of Norway and provide high-speed internet. Next slide, please. First up, two important principles in the Norwegian broadband market. First up, minimum regulation. an investment-friendly regulation to harvest broadband build-out. And second, cooperation, where market-driven investments are the main rule, and also the last parts of Norway where it's not financially so there is no money for the providers. You can also use state and local public money. Next slide, please. There is a political ambition in Norway to provide broadband to 100% of the population by the end of 2025. The current coverage for 100 megabits download and 10 megabits upload is 90%. For 1 gigabit, it's 87%. For the fixed broadband, so fiber investments, they are typically driven by local and a few national utility providers, and their business cases are most often based on internet and TV offers. Recently, there was released a report in Norway said that an accelerated deployment of gigabit infrastructure until 2025 could result in a gain of 25 billion Norwegian kroner. And the cost estimation for this 100% build out with fiber is 16.6 billion Norwegian kroner. And if we can use fixed wireless access or 4G or 5G, the cost estimate is 3 billion Norwegian kroner. There is a difference in the download and upload speed there, but still. Next slide, please. 5G is, we see that is very important for mobile and as a complement to fixed broadband rollout. Because of that, up to 560 million Norwegian kroner, or approximately 56 million euros, of the 5G auction revenue in 2021 can be used in order to roll out high-speed internet to underserved households, or the last 2 or 3% of the population. Encom provides a list of predetermined households for the MVNOs to have a list, so they can choose the areas they want to roll out their high-speed internet or broadband. This is, of course, in addition to other state-aided broadband deployments. Next slide, please. For some verticals, they may have other needs than the MNOs can provide. And because of that, we have started to develop a regulation for 3.8 to 4.2 gigahertz band for private and non-public networks. It's based on the UK regulation, but we have also started some pilot project with some actors that wants to build out these networks, and we are working to establish the final regulation together with these these actors. Yes, I think that concludes my presentations for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you very much for this presentation. I noted several interesting points. I was actually talking about the geographical typology in Greece, but you also face challenges in deploying high-capacity network in Norway. And I wrote that you find, at least for now, fixed wireless access as a good way to connect the underserved population in a faster and more efficient way than and cost-effective way than other technology, and that's why you are also focusing on that, and 5G as helping you in delivering the speeds and the gigabit targets. Thank you for that. To move now to Katri, I want to know, because you face also the similar problem in Finland as in Norway, from an operator point of view, how is fixed wireless access part of your home broadband solution, and how is it deployed? How is it priced? How do you engage with clients on fixed wireless access?
Hello, everybody, and greetings from Finland. Finland, as some of you may know, is a relatively big country with a relatively little amount of people living in it. The Finnish broadband market can be divided into two segments, and it is actually a 50-50 split between the multi-dwelling units in the cities and then the single dwelling units in the suburbs and in the countryside. The MDUs are very much catered with fiber and coax connections, but fixed wireless access has opened us new opportunities to offer high-quality, high-speed broadband services to the SDUs. And from telco perspective, fixed wireless access allows us to offer fixed connections to new areas where we haven't had fixed connections available before. And like Kostas also mentioned, it offers a cost-efficient way to cater areas where housing density might not be adequate to make the fiber investments worthwhile. And I know this is not a shared challenge across Europe, but building fiber is tricky in a country where half the year the land is frozen, whereas fixed wireless access can be delivered whenever. The definition of fixed wireless access varies in different countries, and in many cases, it can mean an outdoor unit, or even in some cases, indoor unit with 4G or 5G best effort subscriptions. At DNA, we also have that type of offering available for our customers, but with fixed wireless access proposition, we offer even more. It is a professionally installed high-quality 5G connection that comes with a speed guarantee. Next slide, please. With the DNA Home 5G, we wanted to build a proposition for the SDUs that would fix the pain points of current 4G and VDSL users are having. But also, we wanted to create a solution that could realistically compete as an alternative for the fiber. As you know, 4G networks can occasionally get too much traffic, so the speed is not adequate at all the time, whereas VDSL technology is not capable of catering the needs of today's broadband customers, at least not in the Finnish customers with heavy data usage. In the core of DNA's fixed wireless access proposition is a 100 meg speed guarantee. Yeah, you normally get to enjoy the 400 or 1 gig speed you have subscribed, but even in the kind of special rush hour occasions, we will always ensure that there's enough space to enjoy your favorite Netflix series or high quality video conferencing calls. So from customer point of view, fixed wireless access offers fast fiber-like connectivity with easy installation that can be delivered in just few weeks all year long. And compared to fiber, it's cheaper to get. The delivery time is few weeks compared to worst case a few years. And there's, of course, no need to dig your gardens or yards to get the connection to your home. The installation fee of fixed wireless access, this 5G we are offering, is half or 1/4 of the price of a fiber. The monthly subscription fees, on the other hand, start at a very similar price level. What we know is that the customers who have ordered DNA's fixed wireless access solution have been extremely satisfied, and the NPS is actually much higher than in any other broadband product we have. Next, please. DNA's customers have been one of the world's most avid mobile data users already for several years now. And the data usage of fixed wireless access customers grew by 12% from 2020 to 2021. And the daily usage is 16 gigs, which is over twice more than 5G routers having a 5G best effort subscription, and over 4 times more than a basic 4G home broadband users are using. So basically, the data usage doubles when moving to a better technology, indicating that people who use a lot of data are also willing to invest on a better solution, kind of offering a better customer experience. And actually, fixed wireless access can cater this need extremely well. In Finland, the mobile network quality and coverage are extremely good. The DNA's 5G network already covers almost 2/3 of the Finns, so based on kind of the place of residence, which means that more than 3.6 million people are getting to enjoy 5G at their homes. The expansion of the 5G network continues, and it is to cover 99.9% of the Finns in the coming years to meet up the 4G LTE coverage we already have in place today. Thank you. That was my intro for the panel.
Thank you very much, Katri. It's actually very good to also have numbers of how fast you can deploy fixed wireless access compared to fiber or other technology, and be confident that the roses in the garden won't be trenched out to deploy fiber, and really grasp the full capacity of 5G fixed wireless access. To know more about where we stand right now, let's get some statistics and know more about the technology. Julien, if you want to come up and enlighten us a little bit, what are we talking about, how much are we talking about, and where are we headed?
Thank you, Stephanie. I would like to thank also the Forum Europe for the invitation to invite the GSA 4G 5G fixed wireless access forum to attend and present. I mean, it has been said already a couple of times. To us, 4G 5G fixed wireless access is simply needed to close the digital divide in Europe or globally, and especially having in mind the 2025 targets in Europe. We should not forget these ones as well. They are very important, as it has been mentioned by Bent just before in Norway. Can we move to the next slide, please? So here, clearly, as we have seen, COVID-19 has contributed to put and emphasize even more than before the need for reliable broadband connectivity for home working, for personal life, everything. But nevertheless, globally, we all know that there are still 3.7 billion people who are not yet connected. So at the forum, as we have explained so many times, we really think that fixed wireless access is a life changer, because you have to be connected with a reliable solution. And so fixed wireless access in that sense is really critical. And this is true for developing countries, developed countries. I think Stephanie just mentioned before that some countries are now considering broadband connectivity as a commodity. And I would like maybe just to give and emphasize the European side of things. A couple of weeks ago, there was this conference on the future of Europe. There was a communique about it, and they agreed like 49 detailed proposals at the end of April. And one of them, so to be perfectly correct, the proposal 31 is called access to digital infrastructure. And the objective is equal access to the internet is a fundamental right of every European citizen. And honestly, to be able to do so in the time frame we have, fixed wireless access is just indispensable. We have to have it. Can we move to the next slide, please? So why is it so much needed? We have discussed briefly all the benefits both by 5G and 4G fixed wireless access. We have just heard from Katri that the time to market is very important. Fixed wireless access, you can get the connectivity installed very quickly. You can scale, as it has been mentioned earlier as well, so you can bring more capacity, you can improve the speeds, the features, and so on, almost on an on-demand basis. So you follow what is happening in your network, and then you improve and you expand. It's very easy to do. And as I think it has been recognized also by Franco in his introduction, we need to have a series of technologies. Fiber is very great technology, it's a very good technology, but it cannot address all situations efficiently. And maybe Stephanie shared a personal experience before. I can also mention mine. I have been living for 5 years on the wrong side of the road. So fiber was available on the other side of the street, and I have 2 megabit per second connectivity on my side of the street. And there was nothing else to do than waiting for a new set of public funding investment, which was supposed to happen 5 years later. And finally, it has been postponed. So what I was doing when I had critical meetings like the one today, I had to use my mobile phone and rely on the 4G connectivity. So I think this is demonstrating the strength of the mobile connectivity, mobile technologies. So having all those things in mind, at the end of 2020, several companies put their hands together and agree some objectives, because as we are seeing today, there is still much to be done about educating the industry, educating the market about 4G, 5G fixed wireless access capabilities, about the ecosystem behind, how quickly this is deployed, what kind of benefit the end users are getting. And this is why we have created this organization. Dan, please, can we move to the next slide? So you can see on the left part of the screen all our members. So when we started, we were, I think, 15, 16 companies at the end of 2020. We are today 47 members. And as you can see, all dimensions of the fixed wireless access ecosystem, the 4G, 5G fixed wireless access ecosystems, are represented. So we have infrastructure, all the leading infrastructure vendors, CPE vendors, chipset vendors, module vendors. We are all contributing into this effort to educate the market about these technology benefits. We are publishing different reports. One of them is what we call the catalog, which is the device ecosystem company directory, where all our members have one page to introduce the products they are offering to the market. We have information about CPEs, modules, and chipset there. We also conducted what is, I think, very, very important, which is on the right part of the slide here, this device market survey study, where we, in fact, shared some information about shipments to really try to give a sense of what is the average number of shipments on an annual basis for fixed wireless access. And try to also help the analysts in the industry or operators to get a sense of the size, the real size of the market, because there are so many definitions of fixed wireless access. There is confusion, and we have we really wanted to bring a little bit more clarity on these aspects. So basically, we have shared our, respecting confidentiality rules, obviously, we have shared information about the shipments, and we have a huge volume of 75 million units, for example. And we are organizing regularly webinars. The last one was last week, allowing people to share best practices about fixed wireless access. Can we move to the next and final slide, please? And not only we are doing this, we are also representing the fixed wireless access industry voice in different occasions. So we have obviously contributed to the public consultation that was ongoing in Europe about the public state aid for broadband guidelines. And we have really pushed some recommendations to the authorities. So obviously, the draft proposal is going in the right direction. This is technology agnosticity is promoted, but fixed wireless access, we think, should be emphasized maybe a little bit more. We should make funding eligible not only to passive, but also active components. I think one thing that has already been mentioned, vouchers on the CPE side to cover the high price 5G CPEs at this point in time to help this cost to be lower for end users would be something very interesting. And as it has been mentioned as well, fixed wireless access is not just about, fixed wireless access in the sense of broadband connectivity. 4G, 5G fixed wireless access also have lots of synergies with the 5G agenda that all countries have. Many countries have a 5G action plan. So investing in this kind of solution, it's investing 1 cent to achieve 2 objectives. So it's 1 stone killing 2 birds, if you wish. So we really want to promote this kind of technologies. And also we need to keep realistic ambitions in terms of what kind of connectivity is really needed by end users. And so I will stop here. I hope I was not too long. And I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Julien. It's really interesting that digital infrastructure is finally recognized as essential. And I think you said fundamental rights. I really like how you also touch on how national broadband plans have to include fixed wireless access or be technologically neutral. And also, it's a discussion we will have later because I'm really interested, as you know, about the ecosystem and the devices world around fixed wireless access. But just before that, let us welcome Patrick, who will tell us a little bit more, also touching on this aspects and mostly the road with 5G fixed wireless access, maybe 6, maybe more. Patrick, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Stephanie, and good morning, everybody from Ireland. When I was asked to speak for this webinar and I was asked to give a short 5-minute introduction, I had to have a bit of a think, what can a hardware manufacturer do to make something interesting? And I was either going to go down the roadmap route and show you what's coming in, or I'd rather tell you the story of fixed wireless access right from the very beginning. So if you can go to the first slide, please. This whole journey started approximately 19 years ago in 2003 with the launch of 3G wideband CDMA. Back then, we had the dizzy broadband speeds of 2 megabits per second at launch, and we typically had 2 early products launched. One was from Novotel Wireless, which is where I worked at the time, and the other was from Option in Belgium. And between the 2 companies, we pretty much captured about 50% each of the market in Europe, approximately about 25-30 million devices in 2 years. What we then started to see was a bit of an evolution because there was no real ecosystem within the 3G space. And one thing that we saw very early on is we started to see a lot of PCM CIA data cards coming back completely fried out, and we couldn't figure out why. In all the test conditions, again, we couldn't figure out why. And then we noticed a lot of Wi-Fi access points were appearing on the market with PCM-CIA slots. Now, these things weren't designed, the PCM-CIA cards were never designed to go into a router. The shielding wasn't on them. So we kind of made the light bulb moment that this is why we're seeing these cards coming back. So we in Europe spoke to our CTO at the time, and we said, look, there's a market for this. Why don't we do an embedded piece of CPE and see where it takes us? I was told to go off and find a customer, and that first customer was O2 Germany. So the desire to have fixed wireless access is actually about 18 years now. So O2 launched their O2 Home package, and very rapidly Vodafone approached us. They wanted their version. They also wanted it to support fax and voice. They wanted to have a wireless fixed line replacement device. The challenge that threw up was that none of the 3G modules at the time supported fax. So we had to use an old GSM module as well, which gave us a rather bulky product, which you can see underneath there, which was called Vodafone Zuhause. They were both purchased in volume, so the demand was there, and O2 sold through 20,000 pieces in the first month. And it became pretty much established that, you know, fixed wireless access, or mobile broadband as we called it back then, was becoming more and more. We then saw different form factors coming into play. HSDPA was coming down the road, chipsets were getting smaller and cheaper, and we saw the advent of the USB dongle. So the USB dongle was able to be used on laptops that didn't have PCM-CIA slots, i.e. cheaper laptops. We then started seeing the advent of mini PCI Express modules that were able to be dispatched to as an OEM product into router manufacturers and so on. We also saw the PCM-CIA get smaller and faster. We saw other products coming in from other manufacturers. We started seeing the Wi-Fi for the first time, and all the way along speeds were getting faster. So the 2 megabits per second jumped to about 6 megabits per second, and then it jumped all the way through to 21 megabits per second. And then we started seeing industrial products coming out. Industrial products, industrial routers with Siren were typically used. CCTV, EPOS and ATM connectivity became a big thing. And they started selling in good numbers. And then what we then saw throughout the rest of that decade was the ecosystem gradually touching base with everything. We saw adapters coming out for USB modems. Again, it was like a cheap alternative to getting an embedded router. And what we saw over that time period, that 6-year time period, was an entire ecosystem evolve all around the use of broadband on the move. It could have been for people in apartment blocks that couldn't get broadband up to their apartment, or people in rural areas that had 3G, but there was no chance of them getting DSL. We started seeing product, and we started seeing products selling well. So we go to the next slide, please, Stephanie. So the ecosystem had evolved. What typically happened over the next 10 years was speeds started to evolve, and we started to see new technologies. So beamforming was one of the big ones, and MIMO was another area that started to come into its own. So MIMO is not new. It's been around since about 1996, but there was never really a mass market requirement for it. But when we got to the end of HSDPA Plus and 3G, suddenly we realized using MIMO, we could actually double that data speeds up to 42 megabits per second. And that was a good interim measure. But in December 2009, we had the very first 4G network rollout in Sweden with Telia. And now all of a sudden the technology was evolving. So all the CPE manufacturers were starting to race ahead now. we started seeing lots of other players coming in. We started seeing Huawei, ZTE, we started seeing ATEL. At the time, I was working for Option. Beamforming was another area that started coming into its own as well. It was relatively new. And to explain beamforming for the non-technical, if you were to throw the floodlights on in a stadium, you're pretty much going to illuminate everything. But beamforming was the ability to direct that energy at an individual device. Hence, it'd be like putting on a very large LED flashlight to zoom in on one person. So beamforming and MIMO started taking off. We then also started seeing the LTE speed start to increase. They came in pretty much 100 kilobits per second, jumping almost rapidly to 150 megabits per second. Apologies, I just said kilobits on the last one. So Cat1 never really deployed as a product. Everything kind of jumped to Cat4. So Cat4 was something all of a sudden people had that could even improve on DSL speeds. The ecosystem carried on maturing. Speed started increasing. When we got up to Cat6, which doubled Cat4, then we started having serious speeds. We started seeing in many countries the ability for fixed wireless access in its true flavors. Within ATEL, a bit before my time, we then started seeing the requirement for outdoor units. So in hot countries, there would be a lot of problems with the materials within buildings, or it could be the lead in the thermal reflective glass. But the signal indoors would be pretty poor compared to the signal outdoors. So the answer to that, stick a modem and an advanced antenna array in an outdoor unit, make it weatherproof, pipe the cable in through coax, get a nice chunky access point on the inside. Hey presto, you've got broadband in rural areas. There's particularly large uptake of this type of fixed wireless access throughout Africa. Even today, they're continuing all the way through to Cat12, which is 600 megabits per second. Now that took us over a period of 10 years to get all the way through the LTE categories and the LTE evolution.
Patrick, I'm sorry to interrupt. I think your time is unfortunately up. If I could ask you to make your conclusions, we do need to move on to the questions if possible. So
okay, jump to the last slide, please. I'll wrap this up quickly.
Thank you.
So now we have an entire ecosystem of 5G product. We've went to the second evolution. So the speeds have already doubled in speed. The things to look out for, which are coming down the line, you've got reconfigurable intelligent surfaces. These will make a big difference to the deployment of millimeter wave. It's the ability to put tiny little nodes on street furniture to boost non-direct line of sight reflections. Millimeter wave will make its debut properly within the next 12 months. This is largely down to free or cheap spectrum, and 5G advanced you will see in the next 12 months. Sorry for going over time there, Dan.
Thank you very much, Patrick. It's actually very interesting. I did not know that fixed wireless access has been in the pipes for the last 18 years. That's a long time, and I really appreciate how you walked us through the products and life cycle and how they are becoming more performant and efficient to be able to carry the promises of fixed wireless access. Let's open the discussion now. We've had a lot of questions in the chat, so please feel free to continue sending your questions. We'll try our best to answer them during this chat. We have let's say 20 minutes of discussion together. So I will ask the panelists to be as brief as possible in their answers because there's a lot to cover. And I would actually like to start linked to what Patrick just said. In your opinion, and maybe we can start with Costas and Julien, and then whoever wants to answer after that. In your opinion, why have we waited to today to talk about fixed wireless access? Is it the technology that wasn't there? Is it the demand or supply that wasn't there? A willingness at regulation level? Kostas, maybe a quick overview of what you think about that.
Thank you, Stephanie. Indeed, today, if we look market data, we see fixed wireless access gaining momentum. I mean, there are some really interesting figures indicating that more than 50% of service providers in all regions in the world offer fixed wireless access now. And in Western Europe, almost all service providers have fixed wireless access offering. And according to GSA report of December 2021, there were 81 operators worldwide offering residential and small business 5G fixed wireless access broadband services, which represents an increase of 84% compared to December 2020. And also projections for the future prove that there will be more than 80 million fixed wireless access connections by the end of 2022, and this number is forecast to grow almost threefold towards 2027. And with 5G fixed wireless access gaining more and more share of this. This increased momentum for fixed wireless access, I believe, is first of all due to network performance improvements that make fixed wireless access suitable for several use cases, including extensive video streaming, for example. And furthermore, new spectrum in several bands becomes available globally, and the network cost per delivered bit keeps dropping, enabling a viable operator business case for fixed wireless access, and making it affordable to households for services such as TV and video streaming. Also, fixed wireless access offers additional revenue streams, and also fixed wireless access is now supported and included in government's initiatives. Governments launch various programs and subsidies to support and speed up broadband network rollouts, and fixed wireless access is included in such kind of tools. So I think for all these reasons, we see this increased momentum of fixed wireless access today.
Thank you, Kostas. Julien, maybe a few additional points on that? On your
Yes.
side?
Yeah, I mean, very few, because I think Kostas said most of it. So I will try to focus a bit more. I think it has been mentioned also by Patrick. Fixed wireless access overall has been there for even more, 20 years and so on. There are big differences though. Today, there is a strong 3GPP ecosystem. There is no question which technology to be used. It's clear. Things are scaling up. 4G fixed wireless access was also deployed widely. There is an existing path. You can also leverage the existing mobile infrastructure that is in place to add on this. So, it's all accelerating stuff. I'm glad to see that Kostas is using GSA statistics, because this is the purpose of our activities, try to educate, give market industry information. In terms of the CPEs, we also see a very quick uptake in the numbers of commercial products available. We are now 213 5G fixed wireless access commercial products announced. It's 61% more than last year. So this is also creating demand. And finally, just to focus maybe on the European side of things, I think the fact that the C-band is widely made available now is also playing a critical role, because this is, I think, the ideal kind of band for fixed wireless access, because it's a good mix between coverage capability and capacity. And I will stop here.
Thank you, Julien. Just to wrap up this question, because we have a lot more. And Patrick, you were mentioning millimeter waves. We know that in Europe, it's not deployed as fast as we want. Maybe COVID was partly responsible for the delays. what difference would it bring to the fixed wireless access compared to what we have now in Europe?
It would be a game changer. A lot of operators still don't understand how to use millimeter wave. They tried in North America to deploy it for handsets, and it failed miserably because it's the wrong sort of technology for mobile connectivity. What they've realized now is that it's actually perfect for fixed wireless access. The spectrum that's needed for millimeter wave is outside of the spectrum required for 5G. So the problem that we're seeing at the moment with 5G spectrum is people are paying a lot of money for between 50 and 100 megahertz. Data is increasing on networks at the rate of 30% year on year. If they were to deploy fixed wireless access of 5G only, it's fairly easy to do the math that you're going to be running into challenges, 5 or 6 years down the line, especially with the increase in capacity with CPE equipment over the next 2 to 3 years. 3GPP happens next year. That means it's going to have an impact a year after that. Millimeter wave, to give you an example, if you were to use fixed wireless access on 5G spectrum, think of it as a 2-lane highway giving you between, well, I think our fastest device at the moment is about 3.5 gigabits per second. But if you deploy millimeter wave on spectrum, which in many countries is free spectrum. So one of the countries we're working with at the moment, they've got 50 megahertz of 5G, but they've got 400 megahertz of millimeter wave for free. So a millimeter wave connection is like a 10-lane superhighway. Each channel is much faster than on 5G. So in trials that we're seeing at the moment in one country, we're achieving 20 gigabits per second over 5,000 meters. Problem with millimeter wave though is it's a point-to-point technology. It's direct line of sight technology. So that poses its own challenges. But what we're seeing now is innovation coming down the line, such as RIS, that can have little cheap. It's a reflection technology, but it can be deployed on handsets. It can be deployed on street furniture. We're looking at an initiative. Verizon in the US are actually putting these nodes on street lampposts. Tiny little cost. They're working with the energy companies, doing it as a service. And it's providing ideas for other innovators around the world to implement these sorts of initiatives. And what we're seeing this year is we're seeing a lot of countries, especially in Eastern Europe and over in the North America and Latin America, experimenting with this now purely on fixed wireless access. If they can take fixed wireless access out of the 5G spectrum and put it into the high-end spectrum, north of 26 gigahertz, all of a sudden fixed wireless access comes really into its own and doesn't have the massive impact that will have on 5G spectrum.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Turning into the implementation of fixed wireless access, Bent, I have actually a question from the audience that we won't have time to go through the 27 member states of the EU, but can you give us, in your case, a concrete example of fixed wireless access supportive policy you've implemented? You touch on several funding, for example, aspects during your presentation. Is there more that we have to know?
No, I'm not sure there is a lot more.
The most important.
Yeah, I think the funding is the most important that we can do for the moment, and then of course availability of frequency resources, which we have a project going on now where we are looking at new frequency bands. Not concluded yet, but I guess the funding would be the main thing that we can contribute with.
Thank you.
Stephanie?
Yes, sure.
Maybe I can add an example, just because you and I are French, so let's speak about France just quickly. There is, for example, this Cohésion des Territoires program. In fact, it was a 100 million euro budget to subsidize CPEs. And before it was 150 euros per unit. And the government last year, I think, announced that they will double this to 300 euros. And in some specific circumstances, it can go up to 600 euros to finance. I think in the Nordics also, you can deduct from your taxes the professional installation. I mean, there are different schemes like this. And you have, of course, the coverage obligation and also the NBPs and so on. I stop here.
Thank you. It's actually a very good transition to Katri to confirm or not the subsidy side for getting access to fixed wireless. And a question from the audience to you, Katri. They want to know what is the total number of fixed wireless access subscription in Finland, obviously, I guess, from DNA, and how many installation per day are you roughly doing or seeing on the market?
Yeah, so like I said, the definition of fixed wireless access kind of varies also within the market. We see fixed wireless access as this special product with the speed guarantee. We are the only one offering this type of solution in the market. But if we think like and we started to talk about fixed wireless access in Finland when 5G and outdoor units came. So that's the kind of really the definition. And if we think of the market today, my estimation, I can't share our figures, but we have 3 big players in Finland. So it's highly competitive market. And then we have these kind of smaller fiber players that are getting investments that want to kind of build infrastructure in Finland. So the competition in this kind of SDUE market at the moment is heated up. And it's good for the customers because they have then more opportunities. And that's what I like about fixed wireless access, that we can give them more opportunities to choose from. But regarding the volume, so if we consider 5G subscriptions with outdoor units, I would say that we are starting to be close to 100,000 installations in the Finnish market, approximately. We don't have exact data on this one, and none of the operators here are publishing exact figures.
Thank you for giving us figures in the first place. A last brief question on this regulatory aspects that directed to you, Kostas, from the audience. Again, if you can be brief with the answer. I guess we still have like 7 minutes to go. So T-Mobile in the US is bringing 5G to 99%, mostly on 100 megabit per second, without subsidies. Should we do similar in Greece and in Europe, or should it be subsidized? I guess it's the ratio, and it's also a good link to my last question for you. And the next session is, until what point can it be private investment, and when should it be subsidized, if any, on fixed wireless access? What's your opinion on that?
Well, thank you, Stephanie. As you already pointed out in one of your earlier statements, in my opinion, I would agree with you. Especially Greece is a kind of type of country that is, in my opinion, well suited for fixed wireless access. This is because of morphology and topology challenges. So we have a lot of islands. First of all, we have a lot of mountains. We have a lot of rural areas. I think 45% of our population is is around 2 big cities, and all the rest areas of Greece are sparsely populated. And we also face seasonality challenges. I'm talking about summertime with a lot of tourists visiting Greece. So I could give an example of the Santorini island. But during winter time, the population of the island is, I don't know, 5,000 people. During summer, maybe it's millions. So indeed, I think Greece is a country where fixed wireless access could make sense. Not the only country in Europe, also others. But what we see today is that fixed wireless access deployment in Greece is very limited. So it seems that our operators maybe prefer other technologies. Greece has been traditionally based on copper network. Now there are a lot of investment plans towards fiber, but I think fixed wireless access should be considered. And at this point that we want to introduce this technology and motivate the use of these technologies, subsidies are really required. So at least fixed wireless access should be included and treated equally to other technologies in existing framework programs, but also maybe we can consider designing some special instruments focused on fixed wireless deployment for Greece. From a regulatory point of view, a couple of comments I also mentioned in my original statement. It's first of all, we need to see the spectrum part, because of course it is required for fixed wireless access deployment, and also access to poles and street lights and all this public infrastructure would indeed benefit the deployment and rollout of fixed wireless access.
Thank you very much, Kostas. And I had a last question that will do the junction with the next session. I need you to answer in 25 seconds. That's the challenge. And that's on, and obviously who wants to answer goes first. On the return on investment for fixed wireless access, maybe Katri, you can have a very few words on that, as you're hands-on on that, and whoever wants to go after, if we can have everybody, that would be great.
Well, sorry, can you say the question again? So,
the return on investment of
the return of investment
compared to other technologies.
Well, of course, depending where you fill the fiber, it can vary from years to over 10 years. And with fixed wireless access, we try to get it in a much shorter period of time. So, if from operator perspective, yes, definitely the ROI is better.
Okay, Bent, maybe.
Sorry. Well, as a regulator, I'm not sure that I have a lot of comments on that.
No, but as financing one or the other technology and the prominence of fixed wireless access right now.
I guess to us, the important thing is that everybody should have high capacity broadband, and what technology they will have that. We will not choose.
Thank you, Julien.
Yes, I think very shortly, in this question, you have to study, what kind of area you're covering and so on and so forth. So maybe I would just refer to a recent study, not from GSA, but from the GSMA Intelligence. Recently, they published a cost analysis, a cost modeling report looking at these topics. And you can see that the cost is between 80% less using fixed wireless access than fiber in rural areas, up to 44 or 45, I don't remember, % in urban areas. But you need to look precisely at the assumptions and so on. But generally speaking, yes, the return on investment is much shorter.
Thank you, Kostas. I saw your hand.
Yeah, very briefly, 3 comments. Fixed wireless access has for sure shorter time to market than fiber. Second, fixed wireless access has more attractive and investment and risk profile than fiber.
Yes.
And third, fixed wireless access deployments reuse existing infrastructure. These 3 points, in my opinion, make the business model and the expected return of investment of fixed wireless access quite interesting.
Thank you, Kostas. And last few seconds, Patrick.
In the discussions we have, it's always down to the TCO model of the customer. In which case you've got 2 types of fiber, not one. Fiber to the home, fiber through the air. Fiber through the air is very cheap. It's only designed to last about 3 years. The weather takes it out. But it's cheap. Used for certain types of customer. Fiber to the home is very expensive, but it's designed to last 30 years, and it can be upgraded and so on. And then there's a third category where fixed wireless access is perfect. Fixed wireless access competes directly with fiber now, and in some cases exceeds the speed of fiber. So now it's all down to the TCO.
Thank you. Wrapped up in 20 seconds each. Thank you very much for being on this panel. I hope the audience could gain some insights about fixed wireless access infrastructure side. And I will leave you with a short break before we continue with the second session on investments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Stephanie, thank you so much. And I'd like to also add my thanks to Stephanie, to all of our panelists for a really, really interesting discussion. And of course to Franco as well for his keynote to kick things off at the start of the day. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate that. And I'm sorry that we couldn't carry on. I'm sure we could have carried on that for a lot longer.
That's for sure.
Thank you all so much. Thank you. So that's the end of the first panel. We're now going to have a short break. So we're going to be having around about a 15-minute break. And then we're going to be back at around about 11:15 Central European time for the second of our panels today. The issue of funding has, of course, just been brought up towards the end of that session there, has been something that's been discussed in a little bit of detail there. We're next going to be going into a lot more detail in that and focusing on public funding initiatives to support fixed wireless access and how we can maximize the available support. So that's going to be back here on the main stage in just around about 15 minutes or so. In the meantime, thank you again to our panelists for this morning's session. Thank you to all of you out there for all your comments and questions as well. Feel free to go out and make yourself a quick tea or coffee and make sure you're back here in 15 minutes for session 2. See you shortly. Thank you.